Two vehicles leave the same location at the same time. One travels north with a constant speed of 30 miles per hour, while the other travels east with a constant speed of 40 miles per hour. At a time of 2 hours later, find the rate at which the distance between the two vehicles changes. We have a triangle being formed here. If we make up north, one vehicle is traveling to the north, and therefore the rightward would be east. The other vehicle is traveling that way. And the distance between them will end up being the hypotenuse of the triangle. Now all sides of the triangle are changing here. If we name this northward leg y and the eastward leg x, the hypotenuse we can call z, we have rates for the northward traveling, y prime or dy dt. The rate at which the length of y changes is a positive, since it will be becoming longer, 30 miles per hour. X prime or dx dt is the rate at which the eastward traveling vehicle is changing, and it's increasing its length at 40 miles per hour. What we want to find is the rate at which the distance between the two vehicles changes. We want to find z prime. We need to relate the z to the x and y so that we can get the rate of z prime, related to the x prime and y prime. Well, x, y, and z are going to make up the sides of a right triangle, so we can make use of the Pythagorean theorem. One leg squared plus the other leg squared will equal to the hypotenuse squared. There's our related variables equation. To find the related rates equation, we can take the time derivative of both sides, indicated by a prime on both sides. Now, every variable is implicit with time, so every variable will get a prime in the derivative. The first term is power rule. Bring down the power, subtract 1 from it, and then multiply by the derivative inside to complete the chain rule. There's the x prime for that term. Second term is the power rule. Bring down the power, subtract 1 from it, and then multiply by the derivative inside. There's the prime for that variable y. And on the right side, again, we have a power rule. Bring the power down, subtract 1 from it, and then multiply by the derivative inside. There's the z prime. We can divide both sides by a 2, so the 2's will cancel out. And there's our related rates formula. We're trying to solve for z prime. In order to calculate it, we need an x prime, a y prime, and a z. We have the x prime and the y prime, but nothing else in there. However, we were given a time at which to look, and that'll help us determine the x and the y. X will be x prime times t. Y will be y prime times t. This is distance equals rate times time. X will equal, it's traveling at 40 miles per hour, and it's doing this for 2 hours. You multiply the 2, and you will get the distance x in miles. 40 times 2 is 80. For y, we have a rate of 30 miles per hour for 2 hours. We can multiply these. 30 times 2 becomes 60, and y will be 60 miles. We now have the x and y to go in the formula. The last thing we need is the z to also go into the formula so that we can solve for z prime. But we have a related variables formula here. So if you have 2 of the 3, you can always find the third one. So now that we have the x and y figured out, we can plug them into what is the Pythagorean theorem. So we have 80 squared plus 60 squared equals to z squared. 80 squared will be 8 squared, 64, and then the square of the 0 becomes 2 zeros. 60 squared will be the square of 6, which is 36, and then the square of the 0 becomes 2 zeros. 64 plus 36 is 100, and then the 2 zeros come along. So z will be the square root of 10,000. The square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 4 zeros becomes 2 zeros. Technically, when you take the square root, you have plus and minus, though z is supposed to represent a distance here, so we just want the positive result of it. So z is going to be 100 in units of length, which in this problem is miles. We now have everything we need for the related rates formula. We can start plugging values in. So back up here at the related rates, our x is an 80, our x prime is a 40, our y is a 60, our y prime is a 30, our z is a 100, and then we have the z prime. 80 times 40, 8 times 4 is 32, and we have a 0 from each, plus 60 times 30, 6 times 3 is 18, and we have a 0 from each, equals to 100 z prime. 3,200 plus 1,800 add up to be 5,000. And now we can divide both sides by 100. So z prime will be 5,000 over 100. That comes out to 50. So z prime, or dz dt, the rate at which the distance between the two vehicles changes, is 50 miles per hour.